Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Night Ghost Stories on a Sunday as nature intended. Oh my goodness me, we're into August already. Getting dangerously close to autumn here. Here we are in the library, and I don't know if you can see just there he is, His Royal Derpy Lurpiness. So he's joined me in here tonight. In fact, I'm just going to flip the camera around. That's better. Mirror my camera. That's much better. So here we are in the library. Well, what are we reading? We are going to be picking our way through tonight. He's misplaced the book already. Ghost Stations 2, aka ARG. So now we read that one last time. So I'm just picking my way through the ones that we haven't read. Okay, I think we found one that we haven't read. So, what are we drinking tonight? 2-drink strategy. Well, 3-drink strategy. So we are drowning our sorrows initially with the Woodgate dark fruit cider made in Somerset, and it says dark fruit flavor apple cider. Just seeing what ingredients it says. Doesn't say what the ingredients are. Well, it does. It just says suitable for vegetarians and vegans. Served chilled. Thank you. Contains sulfates. So, well, thanks for the. Doesn't say what fruits they are, but never mind. It's good, lovely. So we're having some of that, and then for the second half of the show, that's goodness me, that's almost a pint. For the second half of the show, we will be having our West Somerset Railway Heritage 50 beer, but I'm also washing it down with some of the Highland Earl from Aldi, which is very nice stuff. So, shall we crack on mit der Ghost Stories? We've read that one last time, so Chapter 17, The Headless Ghost. Canon Finney during the Ghostwatch program said, an actual figure of a man wandering round the tower with his head under his arm is a very, very rare beast indeed. And to be frank, I have never come across anything of that kind. But many people have reported seeing headless ghosts. Are they all wrong? Even some ghost of the pilot looking for his head. True or false? One thing is certain. There have been many unexplained happenings in and around Tab V46. Tools have just disappeared and items have been moved around as if by unseen hands, all so very strange. It was almost too much for me, said one maintenance man. On one occasion, a mechanic was lying on the floor whilst working on the underside of an aircraft inside Tab V46. His companion was handing him tools from time to time as needed. The man helping was suddenly called away, and when he returned and apologized to the other mechanic for being away longer than expected, the other man was taken aback. He had not known he had gone, for someone had continued to pass the tools. Many ghostly stories have filtered out from RAF Lakenheath, all very interesting, for I often pay visits to Lakenheath to compare security during my service days with the Royal Air Force Police. It was tight then for security. Now it seems that if there is any breach of security or unexplained happening, they chalk up another for Lakenheath Charlie. From one headless ghost to another. This one has been seen very clearly to become known as the Headless Ghost of Snowdonia. But let us go back and start at the beginning. It's gone very Dylan Thomas now. Let us begin at the beginning. Over the years, the Snowdonia mountain range in North Wales has claimed many victims, many of these being through aircraft that came to grief in the mountains. During the war years, there were many. One such incident occurred around 0300 hours on the 14th of April 1941 when a German aircraft crashed into the mountainside. A few hours earlier, the twin-engined Heinkel bomber, a Heinkel 111 from the 1st Staffel of KG-28, had taken off from its base at St. Malo in France to attack the shipyards at Barrow in Furness. But the German bomber was destined not to return. Near the target area, the Heinkel was hit by ack-ack fire. Then it was engaged by a night fighter, and during a hit-and-run chase, the Heinkel bomber received direct hits which knocked out the radio and compass. The German pilot had survived the ack-ack and the night fighter attack, but was now... He's done it again. The German pilot had survived the ack-ack and the night fighter attack, but, was now without radio. That's not how commas work, Bruce. But was now without radio and compass and still over England. So he's got two errant commas here. Never mind. He set course for home using the night sky and any other landmarks available. But the pilot was miles off course and he was heading for disaster. At approximately 0300 hours, the German bomber hit the plateau on Llyn Môr above Aber Falls in Wales. Miraculously, all the crew, but for the flight engineer, survived the crash. In the impact, the flight engineer was decapitated. This crash happened in the early days of the war when there were numerous crashes, many from Royal Air Force bombers returning shot up from missions and many during training flights. Many during training flights. Doesn't need the comma, Bruce. Many of the aircraft that crashed in mountains and other open spaces were never recovered. Many were never found, not even to this day. They were listed as missing and, are still missing. Doesn't need the comma, Bruce. Sooner I get some alcohol in me to calm me down, the better, I think. A few years ago, a party of aviation enthusiasts were climbing on Llyn Môr when they came upon the wreckage of the Heinkel bomber. Being aviation enthusiasts, they realized the importance of their find and Being aviation enthusiasts, they realized the importance of their find and, knew it was a World War II German aircraft, full stop. Doesn't need the comma. What do you do on Sunday night? I tuned in to watch Sunday Night Ghost Stories with a confused man from Dudley ranting at the camera, but instead all he did was go on about bloody punctuation and stuff. Anyway, they immediately split up in order to examine the widely dispersed pieces of the wreckage, whilst the others set about a much wider search. One member of the party was left to examine the Jumo engines from the crashed bomber. He was very excited and engrossed in his find. He then became aware of a uniform figure sitting on a nearby rock. He looked across at the ghostly figure. His blood ran cold when he saw what looked like a plastic bag or small sheet replacing the head. As a second member was returning, a voice was heard to say, "Don't frighten me." The apparition then disappeared. It was later confirmed that the wreckage was indeed that of the German Heinkel bomber that had crashed on the Llyn Môr in North Wales in 1941, decapitating the flight engineer. That explained the chilling appearance of the ghostly uniform figure with a plastic bag or small sheet in place of the head. The headless ghost of Snowdonia. I think we do deserve a thunderclap for that. I'm aware that we have read these, some of these, we have read these relatively recently, but we're going to crack on. Am I disturbing you, derps? Where's the rest of my... oh, there it is. Looking for the rest of my Japanese-style rice mix. So, right. Slange me far. Oh, lovely. Cheers. Oh, lovely. Oh, got some fan mail turning up. Let's just read the fan mail. Oh, no, I can't read that out. That's filthy. Really, Vicar. Return to Squires Gate. My previous story, The Phantom of Squires Gate, brought a flood of mail to inform me that it could not have been Neville Duke, who Miss Julia Wolfe Harlow had seen as an apparition. Mr. F.A.C. Roper from Weybridge in Surrey even took the time and trouble to send me a photocopy of the relevant page for Duke Neville Frederick from the current edition of Who's Who. Mr. Roper wrote, "You write about Miss Julia Wolfe Harlow, who claimed to have seen the ghost of Neville Duke. I enclose a page from the current Who's Who, which may interest you. It was of great interest to me, for Neville is a very good friend." Squires Gate Airport, today known as Blackpool Airport, was always an unfortunate airfield and one of mystery. Amy Johnson took off from Squires Gate on the 7th of January 1941, only to crash in the Thames estuary. Her body was never recovered and remains one of the mysteries of the Second World War. Oh, the beer burps. 16 minutes and 4 seconds. That's pathetic. Throughout the war, Squires Gate housed many night fighter squadrons. Also, 2,500 Wellington bombers were built at the Shadow Factory on the edge of the airfield. There were many flying accidents and many earthbound spirits remain. Done it again. Many earthbound spirits remain. Now I'm going to say, folks, doesn't need the comma. Miss Julia Wolfe Harlow was at Squires Gate Airfield in the 1950s as a trainee air hostess employed by Mr. Russell Wyam. One particularly wet day, she was in the pleasure flight booking kiosk, a duty which she did when she was not in the air as a trainee hostess. And because of the bad weather, proper use of a comma there, and because of the bad weather, business was down and not very brisk. Julia stood watching the rain pour down. "Suddenly I turned and looked towards the door," she said. "Standing against it with his arms folded, I saw a young man who was staring straight ahead. 'Hello, I didn't hear you come in,' I said, but he didn't look at me. He was wearing some kind of light grey uniform, but no cap. But what was so strange was the fact that his clothing was quite dry. As I stared at him, suddenly recognizing him, he disappeared." So who had Julia seen? She thought no more about it until, during a conversation with her colleague, she was prompted to mention the incident. Someone then told her that who she had recognized was none other than Neville Duke, the famous test pilot who had been killed a few weeks earlier. Now we know it was not Neville Duke. So who was it that Julia saw? I did receive a few suggestions. Me too, Bruce. Mr. E.T. Manby from Lincoln was one of the many who wrote to me, and he said, "In The Phantom of Squires Gate, you describe how Miss Wolfe Harlow recognised the figure of Neville Duke, who was killed about 2 weeks ago. I rather think she must have been mistaken, for in the late 1950s, Neville Duke, a near neighbour of mine at Dunsford, was very much alive. Could it have perhaps been John Derry, another well-known test pilot, who I am sure you will remember was killed when his aircraft broke up as it was turning behind the control tower during the 1952 Farnborough air display?" I'm sure that was a Sea Vixen, actually. I then asked Julia if she could have been mistaken, for it could not have been Neville Duke. She replied, "As for your question, it was very definitely Neville Duke that I had seen. This was confirmed by quite a few of the staff who heard my description of the young man. And although we bought a daily newspaper, we did not see mention of his death 2 weeks back. At the same time, it is said the phantoms of existing people can be seen when they are still alive." So Julia is still adamant that it was indeed Neville Duke. It could not have been, so who was it she saw? I asked Neville Duke, and he said, "Rest assured, no harm done by premature announcement in your book. It happened at least once before in Australia." Neville then went on to say, "I did visit Squires Gate a lot during my time as chief test pilot with Hawker Aircraft when they built a factory there for the production of Hunter aircraft. Looking through my logbooks, I started flying there in April 1952 from Langley using the company Rapide and made my first flight of a Squires Gate Hunter in May 1954. My visits went on until 1956. I did go into the air traffic building to book in and out, as was the practice in those days, and I think the pleasure flight kiosk was in that building." So, on the plus side, we know that Neville Duke did fly in and out of Squires Gate Airport, and he would have to pass the pleasure flight kiosk, but gladly in the flesh, I might add. I then asked Neville if it could have been who Mr. Manby suggested. John Derry was killed at Farnborough on the 6th of September 1952. I am sure he had no connections with Squires Gate, he said. So we are back at square one. The mystery remains, and to give you food for thought, Squadron Leader Neville Duke, wartime pilot, Desert Air Force, holder world speed record 1946, world records London to Rome 1949, London Karachi 1949, London Cairo 1950, world speed record September 1953, and chief test pilot Hawker Aircraft said, "For what it's worth, I do have a habit of standing with my arms folded." We are going to look up, was it John Derry? Yeah, John Derry, test pilot. I'm sure it was a Sea Vixen he was in. John Derry crash Farnborough. Oh God, yeah, no, Bruce kind of skirts over this. Yep, it was what I thought it was. 1952, a prototype de Havilland DH-110 jet fighter crashed during an aero display at the Farnborough Air Show in Hampshire, England. The jet disintegrated mid-air during an aerobatic maneuver, killing pilot John Derry and onboard flight test observer Anthony Richards. Debris fell onto a crowd of spectators, killing 29 and injuring 70. Oh my goodness me, that's grim. That is proper grim. So, share screen. There is the de Havilland DH-110, and it's the aircraft that became the Sea Vixen. So there we go. De Havilland DH-110 prototype WG-236. Yeah, that became the Sea Vixen in service. So that was the one I was thinking of. Just having a look to see. No, it's not the. That's not the one I was thinking of. No, but it's a grim story, and we're not going to dwell on it. So What are we up to? 24 minutes. In the magnificent Rush beer glass. Thank you, viewers. Kirsten and Steve in the United States, Slangsby Bar. Oh, lovely. Your good health. Right, we'll jump on ahead to a nice short one here, which should take us up to half time. You like this one? The Grey Lady. Many people have heard stories about the Grey Lady. There are many, but which Grey Lady? People refer to the ghost of a grey lady simply because the ghost is that of a woman and looks grey. Genius. A ghostly, misty grey figure, the Grey Lady she is thus described as. But this story is about a true grey lady by the very nature of her uniform. During the early part of the Second World War, William Bill Chappell served as a ward orderly with the Royal Army Medical Corps, RAMC, at the Netley Military Hospital situated just southeast of Southampton. The hospital itself was a very large building, strange in the fact that it was built to plans intended originally for a hospital in India. It was in use during the First World War. Medical staff stationed at Netley Military Hospital spoke of the Grey Lady, and many people reported seeing a figure disappearing along one of the corridors. Staff also reported that in one of the upper rooms, a certain window, when shut, was always opened as the occupant left the room. Bill Chappell had heard the story about the Grey Lady, but kept an open mind about it all until one November night when he was on night duty. He had an experience that changed his mind about the Grey Lady. On the night in question, Bill Chappell was on duty. One sister was in charge of a ward some distance away, and another night sister was doing a tour of the wards to check on the patients. The night duty sister discussed various things with Bill and then asked if he had checked on a certain patient who was bedfast in a side ward. Bill Chappell had not done so, and it was then ascertained that the other sister had not left her ward. So the night duty sister and Bill Chappell made their way along to the side ward, which was some distance away, to check on the patient and see if he was requiring anything. On entering the side ward, they found that the patient was quite comfortable. The patient looked surprised to see them both and asked the duty sister if everything was all right. The duty sister was puzzled and replied, "Why do you ask?" The patient then went on to explain that the other sister had been and made him comfortable and brought him a drink of water. So he was very surprised to see the ward orderly and night duty sister so quickly, for she had only been there's a word missing here, for she had only been and left his ward, but Bruce has left the and out. For she had only been and left his ward a few minutes before they arrived. Bill Chappell and the duty sister looked at each other and never spoke. Love at first sight. Then the duty sister turned to the patient and asked him where the other sister had got his drink of water from. The duty sister now had a very uneasy feeling, for she knew that the area from where the water had been obtained was known to be locked. She turned to Bill Chappell, the ward orderly, and asked him to go and check the area leading from the ward in order to get to the bottom of the mystery. Bill left the ward to do as he was bid and was back in double quick time. "The area is all locked," he reported in a shaky voice, and he added, "There are no members of staff in the vicinity." Can you give me a description of the other sister? Asked the night duty sister to the patient, and she added, did you think anything was strange about her? Why all the questions, sister? Has she done something wrong? Asked the patient. No, replied the sister. I just want to know who gave you the water. Both the night duty sister and Bill Chappell were very careful not to enlighten the patient as to their suppositions. They both knew it had to be the Grey Lady. The patient went on to describe the other sister. She was dressed in a different uniform, he said, but I did not think that strange, for I had seen her before in that same uniform. That would be the Queen Alexandra's Imperial Military Nursing Service uniform, said Bill Chappell after he had listened to the description given by the patient. The duty sister agreed with him. Just as they were about to leave the ward, the patient called them back. Oh, said the patient, your other sister never spoke. She just got on with her work and gave me the impression that she was very dedicated in what she was doing. Nothing was too much trouble for her. She did seem very distant, though. A quick swig of the old cider. Well, we've hit half time. Sounds me well. Oh, cheers, me beers. The Grey Lady was seen around the hospital many times, and all the patients visited by the Grey Lady said she was most helpful. All patients stated that she did not speak and seemed engrossed in her duties. The Grey Lady is the ghost of the fiancée of a First World War officer who had been brought in severely wounded. But due to pressure of work with other patients, she was unable to be with him, and by the time she did get to see him, he had died. It seems apparent that she must either have blamed herself, again, errant comma, but never mind. It seems apparent that she must either, comma, have blamed herself for not being there to comfort and nurse him, comma, or was so distressed with the news of his death, comma, that she threw herself out of the window of the room where the window would not shut. So let's just proofread that. It seems apparent that she must either have blamed herself for not being there to comfort and nurse him. That's where you put there is a comma there. That's correct. Or was so distressed with the news of his death, doesn't need a comma, that she threw herself from the window of the room where the window would not shut. Staff who had seen the Grey Lady never saw her as the patients did. They spoke of briefly glimpsing a figure disappearing along one of the corridors. The patients, on the other hand, told how helpful she was in making sure they were comfortable. Bit of burps again, do apologise. Oh, I'm so sorry. There can be no doubt that the Grey Lady is the young nurse who threw herself out of the window. That window is the one that does not stay shut. They all describe her uniform as being that of the Quames, Queen Alexandra's Imperial Military Nursing Service, which is a formidable title for a very formidable group of ladies. The Grey Lady has been described as the Florence Nightingale of the ghost world. She received her training at the Institute of Protestant Deaconesses at Kaiserswerth, Germany. It should be at, not at Kaiserswerth, Germany, and became famous after her wartime work during the Crimean War in 1854 to 1856. Read that again. The Grey Lady has been described as the Florence Nightingale of the ghost world. She, Florence Nightingale that is, received her training at the Institute of Protestant Deaconesses at Kaiserswerth, Germany, and became famous after her wartime work during the Crimean War in 1854 to 1856. Should be an and there, and became That doesn't even make sense. And became famous after her wartime work, right, and became famous after her wartime work during the Crimean War in 1854 to 1856, became known. Right, but try it again. No, we won't. The Grey Lady likened herself to Florence Nightingale in working with the war wounded, and her earthbound spirit is doing penance. Has the Grey Lady now freed herself? The old military hospital is still there. Is the Grey Lady still doing her rounds? That definitely deserves a thunderclap. When we can hit the right button. Let's just mark that one. Yeah, we marked that one. No, I'm sure we read that one before, but we'll read it again. Right. Half-time Derpy. Slange me, Varn. Delicious. Right. We have Japanese style mix rice snack, which I've got to say are dirt lush. Mm. So what have we been up to today? I actually did a trade show, which was good. That'll be my friend Tim, which was splendid. Oh, we haven't got the right font on the graphic there. Actually, I think we'll go with Creepster. No, I don't like that. That's a bit tacky. I think we'll go with Metal Mania. That'll do. Yeah, so it's back into the swing of work this week. Hopefully, 2 reg train trip out on Wednesday. I think what else we got planned for the week. Might be some allotment time, but all right, look. Sorry, folks, I'm getting distracted by messages I'm getting in here. Yeah, so back into the work mode tomorrow. Got a project to finish off by the week. Hopefully 2 reg walk on the railway on Wednesday. Hoping to meet up with some friends at the end of the week for another walk. Some garden work. That's pretty much it. We'll just try and, to quote Queen, keep yourself alive. It's just a case of keeping my head above water. I'm not letting life drag me down at the moment, but sounds me wrong. Oh, cheers. I gotta say, I might go for another bottle of this Highland Earl at some stage because it is very nice. Right, let's get on with the goddamn ghost stories. A haunted holiday. Many old wartime airfields have been given a new lease of life. Some of the lucky ones are used by flying clubs, thus able to continue in a flying role. Others were turned into a variety of uses, which included uses in the leisure industry. Oh, the beer burps again. Do apologise. The domestic site of the old Royal Naval Air Station St Mirren, HMS Vulture, has been converted into a holiday camp. One day, a cleaning lady was working in one of the huts on the old airfield when suddenly she felt a presence and an urge to look around at the bed, which was just behind her. She turned to see a pilot sitting on the bed. He was wearing a fur-lined leather jacket and similar style knee-length boots. He had in his hand a leather flying helmet. I was petrified, said the cleaning lady, and she refused to work in that hut again. From 1978 to 1980, squadron leader Colin Pomeroy served as a flight commander on number 42 Squadron at Royal Air Force St Morgan, flying Nimrod, Hawker Siddeley Nimrod aircraft. And as St Morgan has only a few married quarters located within its confines, he lived in one of 5 ex-Royal Navy officers' quarters at the old Royal Naval Air Station St Mirren. During this period, he became very friendly with members of the Padstow Trevose Head lifeboat crew, and on one of his visits, the conversation turned to Royal Naval Air Station St Mirren and the haunted holiday hut. One couldn't hope to meet a more down-to-earth and level-headed lady than the one to whom I was talking, he said. She was quite emphatic that there was one of the huts on the old airfield into which she would no longer enter. And Squadron Leader Pomeroy added, I cannot obviously vouch for the accuracy of her story. I can, though, vouch for the sincere way in which it was told to me. From a haunted holiday cottage, from a haunted holiday to a haunted holiday cottage, and one that was so bad it made the Hodgkins family pack up and leave before their holiday had ended. This haunted holiday cottage was one on what was part of the old Holmesley airfield in Hampshire. Hurricanes hardly ever happen in Holmesley in Hampshire. Slightly vibrant. Oh, delicious. Right. So here we go with the Heritage 50 Best Bitter. Join us in celebrating 50 years of the West Somerset Railway as a heritage railway. This limited edition commemorative can has been produced to mark this railway's 50th anniversary. A proper classic, just like the golden age of steam, brewed with a robust best bitter malt base and traditional English hops. This well-balanced ale delivers comforting notes of honeyed malt, gentle spice, with an earthy finish. Simply the best for enjoying the journey. Hops, East Kent Goldings and Phoenix. Ingredients: water, hops, malted barley, gluten, wheat, gluten, yeast, allergens in bold, 4% volume of alcohol, 1.9 UK units. Quantock Brewery, which is right on the edge, right outside Bishop's Lydeard Station. So hopefully, like I say, Reg and myself will be doing another trip on the West Somerset on Wednesday. Oh, I'm really missing my wasabi smack mix at the moment. Mm. The old airfield, known officially as Holmesley South, was not far from Christchurch and was very close to the New Forest. During the war years, it housed some Coastal Command squadrons and some Canadian fighter squadrons before being taken over by the Americans to become Station Number 455. American Martin B-26 Marauders then operated from the airfield, which closed soon after the war ended. It had a brief, hectic life, and after the war, the bulk of the airfield was quickly reclaimed by the Forestry Commission. One section is now used as a public road, and some of the buildings at the edge of the airfield in the Forest Road area were turned into self-catering holiday cottages. Again, Bruce's use of the comma does not make sense. One of these holiday cottages was called Heathfield Cottage in Forest Road, Holmesley, on the very edge of the wartime airfield. The cottage was isolated, and the remains of the wartime runway was only a few hundred yards away. Sure, it should be were, never mind. In the summer of 1972, Mr. and Mrs. Hodgkins and their two children decided to again spend the holiday at Heathfield Cottage, but this time Mrs. Hodgkins took her parents along. My husband, myself, and our two young sons had, for a couple of years, spent a self-catering holiday at Heathfield Cottage in Hampshire. We loved every minute of our holiday, and nothing unusual happened, said Mrs. Eileen Hodgkins. But their third holiday at the cottage was to be very different, as she explained. Something happened on that third holiday that has made a lasting impression on me and is as vivid today as it was then. But what was that? Had the Hodgkins family unlocked the time zone? Not really. On that, we agree, Bruce. Cheers, my beard. that's lovely. If Reg and I do go down on the West Somerset Railway on Wednesday, I'm going to get myself some more of their beer because it is Gert Lush. Oh, what do you know? We have another case of a dead soldier, and Run VT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
Do apologise. It started the day they arrived at the cottage. Eileen Hodgkin's mother said she was horrified by the feeling she experienced on entering the cottage. But she said nothing at the time so as not to upset the holiday. Unbeknown to any of us was the fact that my mother was sleeping on a bed previously unused by any of us, said Eileen. This turned out to be not a proper single bed, but an old-fashioned laying-out board. This was not discovered until the next day, she added. It happened on their very first night and repeated every night the same pattern. But for Eileen and her husband, they were unaware of what was going on each night. They just knew it did not feel right, but thought no more about it, for they were on holiday, as Eileen explained. My husband and I were both awakened during the night by heavy footsteps going down the stairs, doors opening and closing, chairs being scraped on the kitchen floor, and the sound of china and cutlery. I am afraid my husband's reaction was, "Can't your parents go through the night without having to make a cup of tea and wake everybody up? Tell them that we are on holiday and to enjoy themselves." The next day, Eileen found that her parents did not bring up the subject, so she thought it better not to say anything. She still decided to stay silent, even though the same thing happened night after night, much to the annoyance of Eileen and her husband. After a few days, Richard, who was 8 years old, the eldest of the two boys, started talking about the nice man in a leather jacket and goggles, and he said to his mother, "The nice man, Mummy, who comes and stands by my bed and smiles at me." It was only then that Eileen and her husband realised that there was some presence in the cottage, but not harmful in any way. Richard was not in the least distressed by the visits from the nice man in the leather jacket, said Eileen, but it did make us wonder what was going on. After a few days, my parents wanted to know why it was we could not sleep at night and had to keep getting up and making tea, disturbing them both. It was only then did we realize that all four of us were hearing exactly the same thing. And Eileen Hodgkins added, "My mother and I are both inclined to be fey, but I can assure you that both my father and my husband are the most down-to-earth men you could meet, and before this, the pair of them would have scoffed at any suggestion of ghosts. I don't know about my father, but it shook my husband." The children took it all as part of the holiday and could not understand what all the fuss was about. To them, it was a great adventure. But for their parents and grandparents, it was a nerve-shattering experience and very upsetting. The feeling in the cottage was one of despair and sadness, said Eileen Hodgkins. The only room you did not experience this was in the bathroom again. The only room in which you did not experience this was in the bathroom. My feet are so itchy. The Hodgkins family were so distressed with it all, they cut short their holiday and returned home. It was just too much for them. It is difficult to say why it happened, and I can only suggest that they bordered on the edge of the time zone, but did not have the psychic power to enter. It is known that the only room in which they did not have a feeling of sadness was the bathroom. This room had been built. This room had been built on after the war and was not part of the original cottage. The cottage was on the very edge of the old wartime airfield, and during the war it was used as a billet for the officers. So it had very strong wartime connections, which could well explain the apparition that visited young Richard's room. Royal Air Force Canadian and Americans, Royal Air Force Canadian and American, I'm sure it should be plurals, not singular, were stationed at Holmesley South Airfield during those hectic war years. For many, it was their last place on earth. The Hodgkins family had been twice before to Heathfield. The Hodgkins family had been twice before to Heathfield Cottage for a holiday and had enjoyed themselves very much. He said that again, and, comma, had enjoyed themselves very much. Doesn't need the comma. They had not felt or heard anything unusual during their previous holidays at the cottage. But with hindsight, Mrs. Eileen Hodgkins did say, "We remember hearing what we took at the time to be a number of birds in the roof space, making a great deal of noise. That is probably all it was. But one can't help wondering after our third visit." The haunted holiday is a mystery, and it would be interesting to know if anyone else had experienced anything paranormal in Heathfield Cottage before or since the Hodgkins experience. As for Mrs. Eileen Hodgkins, sorry, as for Mrs. Eileen, sorry, for as Mrs. Eileen, come on, JM, you can get it right. For as Mrs. Eileen Hodgkins says, believe me, it is something none of us in the family will forget. Definitely deserves a thunderclap. And run BT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
Ha 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 ha. Indeed. Do you know what? I get the funny feeling. No, we've read that one. I get the funny feeling we are running out of. We've read that one as well, because I haven't marked that one, but you have. And we read that one. We haven't read that one, so this might be the last one for tonight. Let's have some more Japanese style rice snack mix. Oh my goodness me, we've still got that much beer to go, and we've just gone through. No, we're actually coming up to the last minute of the show, so. Grand. delicious. Murder cabin. This incident happened in the early 1950s on the main railway line between Stubbins Junction and Helmsmoor, just north of Bury in Lancashire. In November 1959, William Bill Whitehead joined the railway company at Bury and was taken to join the work gang at the Helmshaw end of the railway line. It was not long before they were ready to move down towards what was to become known as the murder cabin. For Bill Whitehead, it was to be where he had his first encounter with a ghost, and he remembers it well. All the beer burps, do apologise. The first encounter I had with the ghost was one morning. I was walking through the length of track, and on my return journey, I decided to sit in the cabin to shelter from the rain. I had been in the cabin about 10 minutes when suddenly the apparition came in. Bill Whitehead sat speechless and was unable to move. He continued, "It was shaped like a person, all white, but I could see through it. It was all so very weird, and as it passed by me, I felt an icy draught. After the rain had ceased, I left the cabin and continued on my way to rejoin the rest of the gang. I didn't say anything to the men for fear of them thinking I was crackers." Bill Whitehead was indeed a very sane, down-to-earth man. He had not been told that the wayside cabin was haunted, and that cold, wet November morning ghosts were far from his mind. He was more interested in trying to keep dry and warm. But haunted it was. In the early 1950s, two plate layers working with a gang on permanent way repairs and maintenance on the main line between Helmshaw and Stubbins Junction had an argument one day, which gradually escalated into a serious matter. What was a joke soon got out of hand, and hate built up very quickly between them. As the quarrel escalated, the two men carried on working in the same gang, but rarely speaking a civil word to each other. Then one morning, while the rest of the gang were working further up the line, one of the men absents himself and, finding an axe in one of the cabins, hid himself behind the door, standing on one of the seats in the corner. His enemy, who was walking on one of the seats, his enemy, who was walking the length of the track, shortly passed the cabin, and noticing that the door was partly open when he knew that it should have been shut and locked, decided to look in to see if vandals had been in and done any damage. He crossed over to the cabin, stood for a few seconds, then pushed the door wide open and went inside. As he entered the cabin, the axe came down on his head, killing him instantly, and he fell with blood pouring from his head. A few days after Bill Whitehead had seen the ghost, he was again in the haunted cabin, but this time it was with the rest of the gang. They had just settled down in the cabin for their afternoon tea. The flasks and cigarettes were out, and the men were just settling down for 10 minutes, when suddenly the apparition entered. The ghost made his way to a corner that he had occupied before. The ghost made his way to a corner that he had occupied before when I saw him, said Bill. I don't know if I had shown any signs on my face, but my ganger said, "It's all right, Bill, it's only Charlie coming for a warm." So I replied, "Yes, I've already met him once." That main line with the murder cabin has now been closed and taken up along with another one. Bill Whitehead and the gang moved when the line was closed, and, he said, both lines are now no more, so I presume so I presume that the murder cabin has also gone along with the others. And he added, I was not unduly scared of the apparition because I believed that they mean no harm to anyone, only revisiting old places and acquaintances. For train enthusiasts and ghost hunters, the lower branch line Stubbins to Rawtenstall has recently reopened. So the ghost still has a line to walk. Removing the murder cabin would not remove the ghost. I think we definitely need a thunderclap for that. I think we'll just read these last couple of bits and then that'll be it. What are we up to? Gone through the hour mark. So, and we've gone 10 o'clock. So, silence me back. Oh. We started with Ghost Watch and ghost hunting. So let us end with a ghost hunting story, with a little mystery. There are many legendary tales of treasure, and we still have the mystery of Lake Toplitz in Austria. At the end of the Second World War, the Germans hid many boxes in the lake. They contained gold, jeweled ornaments from churches, forged English £5 notes, and American $50 bills, and many, many documents that hold many war secrets. Many people have tried to retrieve the treasure, but it is very difficult, for the lake bed is completely covered with logs. A few years ago, an American naval team tried to get to the boxes, but it was called off after 2 divers died on the lake bottom in very suspicious circumstances. A mystery. But let us get on with our gold hunting mystery. No, we're not going to bother with that one because that one's boring. So I think this is it. I think this will be the bum's rush for tonight, if you pardon the expression. So, Slinesby Bar. Oh, lovely. In the magnificent United Federation of Planet Shot Glass, courtesy of friends Kirsten and Steve in the United States, Slinesby Bar. Delicious, sir. Right. So is the answer blowing in the wind, or is it all in the mind? Does the Carlatina Spirito hold the answer? The reproduction shown above is negative. Look at the 3 dots on the nose for 60 seconds without blinking. Then stare at the ceiling, preferably a white one, or the wall to see the positive. Or is it the photographic image they have been talking about? Keep looking until the image appears. The Cartolina. So does the Cartolina Spirito hold the answer? Anyway, so there you have it. Ghosts, ghouls, mystery, superstitions, strange paranormal events. The missing word that no one mentioned, not even the experts, is faith. You must have faith. Faith in what you are doing, faith in your old dog, whatever. You need faith. So, be it ghost hunting or gold hunting, have faith and good hunting. Buona fortuna. The end. I mean, there's still stuff we haven't read. There is a whole chapter we haven't read, and perhaps we'll come back to that at some stage. I need some supper. So, Slinesby, everybody. Oh, that's delicious Heritage 50 beer from the West Somerset Railway, from the Quantop Brewery, no less. So, slange me, Bar. Oh, delicious. Delicious. Right, that's it for tonight. I'm going to have to love you and leave you. I'm sure I ordered another Ghost Stations book the other night. Brain fade. So, fingers crossed. We'll be back for more of this nonsense. I mean, more of this quality entertainment on Wednesday for Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra on a Wednesday. Until then, it behoves me to say thank you for watching. Why? Why not? What else are you going to do on a Sunday night than watch a confused man from Dudley with holes in his head, drink ghost stories, and read alcohol? Come on, folks, you can do better. I can't. I am trapped in this tragic existence. I'm suddenly going to put William Shatner there. I am trapped in this tragic experience. Anyway, until the next time, as ever, thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay out of trouble, and please don't have nightmares. Good night.